You already know something is off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but there's this hollow feeling that follows you around. You're surrounded by people, maybe even people who love you, and yet you feel completely alone, like you're watching your own life through a foggy window. Like everyone else got the manual on how to feel connected and somehow yours never arrived. That feeling has a name, and more importantly, it has a solution. But before we get there, let me ask you something. When was the last time you had a conversation that actually meant something? Not small talk about the weather, not nodding along while someone tells you about their weekend. A real conversation, the kind that leaves you feeling seen, understood, like you matter. If you're struggling to remember, that's not a coincidence, that's a signal. Here's what the research actually shows. Social disconnection activates the same regions in your brain as physical pain, not metaphorical pain, actual, measurable, neurological pain. Scientists have been studying this for decades, and the conclusion is always the same. Human connection is not a luxury. It is a biological need as fundamental as food and water. When you don't get enough of it, your brain and body begin to deteriorate in ways most people never realize. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The feeling of disconnection almost never comes from being alone. Most people experiencing this are not isolated. They're at dinner tables with family, they're at work with colleagues, they're at parties with friends, and they still feel like they're standing on the outside of a glass wall, watching everyone else experience something they can't access. That is what makes this so uniquely painful, because you can't even explain it without sounding ungrateful. Now pause for just a second. Because we have related programs linked in the video description below this video. And I want to be honest with you. If you're watching this and you're thinking you'll come back to it later, you probably won't. The people who have already gone through those programs and completely transformed how they experience their relationships, their sense of belonging, and their overall emotional well-being, they didn't hesitate. They made a decision when it mattered. Don't let the version of you that puts things off win today. Now let's go deeper, because I want you to really understand what's happening inside you, and why it's not your fault. Your brain is wired for connection from the moment you were born. The first thing you ever did was cry out for another human being. Connection is literally your default setting. So when it breaks down, when the signal gets lost, something inside you knows it's wrong even if you can't explain why. And here's where it gets complicated. As you get older, you accumulate experiences. A friendship that ended badly. A relationship where you gave everything and it wasn't enough. A moment where you were vulnerable and someone made you regret it. Your brain, which is designed to protect you, learns a devastating lesson. Connection is dangerous, and so it starts building walls. Not because you want to be disconnected, but because some part of you decided that the pain of rejection is worse than the ache of loneliness. So you start performing. You show up to social situations with the version of yourself you think people want to see. You laugh at the right moments, you say the right things. You become incredibly good at being around people without ever actually being with them. And the crueler irony is that the better you get at this performance, the more invisible you feel. Because somewhere deep down you know, nobody in that room is connecting with you. They're connecting with the character you built to survive. People who have gone through deep work on this, thousands of them, describe the exact same turning point. They described the moment they realized they had been living behind a mask so long they forgot what their real face felt like. Researchers in interpersonal psychology consistently find that the number one barrier to genuine connection is not circumstance. It's not introversion, it's not being too busy. It is the fear of being truly known and rejected. Think about that. The thing you want most, connection, is the thing your survival instincts are working hardest to prevent you from getting. No wonder it feels impossible. You're fighting yourself every single day without even knowing it. And the cost of that fight is enormous. Studies on chronic loneliness link it to significantly increased risk of heart disease, weakened immune function, cognitive decline, and depression. People who report feeling persistently disconnected are statistically more likely to experience severe burnout, anxiety disorders, and a deep pervading sense that life has no meaning. We're not talking about feeling a little sad sometimes. We're talking about a slow, quiet deterioration that touches every single area of your life. Your work suffers because you can't bring your full self to collaboration. Your romantic life suffers because intimacy requires the vulnerability your brain has learned to avoid. Your creativity suffers because authentic expression demands the kind of safety that disconnection steals from you. Even your physical health suffers in ways that show up in blood work, in sleep patterns, in the mirror. Now here's the thing about people who have actually solved this, and I mean completely turned it around. They share something in common, and it's not what you'd expect. It wasn't that they suddenly became more charismatic. It wasn't that they started going out more. It wasn't that they found the perfect social circle or learned how to make better conversation. What changed was something internal, specifically the relationship they had with themselves. Because here's what nobody wants to hear, but everybody needs to. You cannot connect deeply with others until you stop abandoning yourself. Every time you silence your real opinion to keep the peace, you disconnect a little more. Every time you perform instead of express, you drift a little further from shore. Every time you prioritize being liked over being known, you carve out another piece of the person others could actually love. The reconnection process is not complicated, but it does require honesty. It requires you to look at the walls you've built and understand them without judgment. It requires you to identify the specific moments in your life where connection became associated with danger, and to gently, deliberately rewire that association. It requires you to practice what researchers call authentic self-disclosure, gradually letting yourself be seen in small, safe increments until the fear begins to dissolve. People who go through this process describe it as waking up. They describe conversations that used to feel exhausting suddenly feeling energizing. They describe relationships that existed on the surface suddenly having depth. They describe walking into a room and feeling like they belong there, not because the room changed, but because they finally showed up in it as themselves. One shift that comes up consistently is this. When you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be genuine, people feel the difference immediately. You don't have to be more interesting, more successful, or more put together. You have to be more real. And real is something every human being on Earth is starving for. This isn't a journey that takes years of therapy or decades of self-reflection. The people who have experienced the most profound shifts in their sense of connection have done it through focused, intentional work over a concentrated period of time. They stopped waiting to feel ready. They stopped telling themselves they'd work on it when life slowed down. Because life never slows down. You work on it now or you don't work on it. Which brings me back to the programs we have linked in the video description below. If you've made it this far in this video, you are not someone who just passively consumes content and moves on. You're someone who actually wants change. And the people who truly want it, who are ready to stop performing and start living, who are ready to feel what genuine connection actually feels like, they don't close this tab and think about it. They click the link below and they take the first step today. Because the version of your life where you feel deeply connected, genuinely seen, and no longer alone in a crowd, that version is not a fantasy. It's waiting for you to decide it's worth starting right now.